Welcome! You are listening to the CRM Success Show, where you will hear from CRM executives who have overseen some of the most interesting and complex CRM implementations. Your hosts, David Masri and Kiro Whitey, will be bringing you real stories, real insight. Follow along on social media for updates on new episode releases, exclusive content, and much more. Enjoy the show and thanks for listening.
Welcome to the CRM Success Show. Today we're talking with Hector Carballosa, Director of CRM, ERP, and RevOps at inav. Welcome, Hector.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mass. Really appreciate it.
Nice to see you, Hector. So obviously you and Maz have known each other for a little while. You've worked together in different capacities, but nice to have got to know you so far, Hector, through the podcast. So thanks again for joining us as a guest today.
Oh yeah, super happy to be here. Can't think of a better way to cap off the week.
Amazing. So Hector, super interesting background. I was personally excited as well to have this one for the reasons we discussed prior about aviation and having an interest in that space. So why don't you just tell us first and foremost, who is Hector Carballosa?
Yeah, sure thing. I can tell you a little bit about my Salesforce journey and my journey into like the wider kind of tech ecosystem and how that came about. I kind of think of my journey as a little bit of a non-traditional one because I didn't go to a four-year institution, pursue a degree, and then kind of head into the workforce. I was really interested in looking towards kind of joining the workforce immediately and had pursued a career with the Navy. So I looked into joining the Navy and ended up enlisting when I was 17, moving forward with that and going down the nuclear propulsion track. That was super exciting. It was really interesting. I thought I was going to be doing it for the majority of my life. It was an 8-year contract and kind of had that thrown to the side when the legislative situation at that time, the atmosphere kind of changed and led to a bunch of delays with my security clearance. So I was kind of left in a legislative limbo, had no job at that time because I kind of had been focused and dedicated to preparing myself for this kind of career. And so was left kind of in, scrambling to find employment while I waited to hear back from the government about what was going to happen. So I ended up finding a job working at an FAA repair station. So super interesting industry. They basically repair aircraft components. That repair station in particular did pneumatics, hydraulics, and electromechanical. So you can think of like all the different components that make up an aircraft. They're obviously not going to fly forever. Those pieces need to get maintained, and they need to be maintained to certain standards to ensure the safety of all the passengers and the air crew, et cetera. So because of that, it's kind of spawned this entire regulated industry. It's dedicated to servicing the aircraft in a way that's compliant with laws and regulations. So I kind of got thrust into that whole environment. Didn't have a lot of exposure to it prior. I had a lot of interest in technology, had always been very interested in technology and spent a lot of time teaching myself how to code when I was younger and working through different projects, but hadn't had a chance to really apply it anywhere because I was looking at a kind of a distinct route there prior. But yeah, once I had the chance to work there, I really, really enjoyed it. It was very interesting because kind of got the whole gamut. It was like a white collar operation on one side where they're actually handling the sales and getting these people with the aircraft to agree to send these components. And then you actually had the mechanics repairing and working through all that. Tech side came in where they needed very custom systems to run this entire operation because this is obviously not a kind of off the shelf business. It's not like services or something, and all those regulations come into play. So they hired me as a temp employee, and I worked a lot on their ERP, doing data cleanup, doing kind of like product lists, then started getting more into Power BI, visualization, understanding that it was a SQL database. We engaged with some consultants at the time, and they really widened my eyes to the larger space and kind of got me thinking about ERPs in a different framework. So they introduced me to the concepts of like management information systems and trying to optimize the ERP further than what was there out of the box and tying it heavily into the processes and things of that nature. It was very limited though. It was Oracle-based ERP, not a lot of documentation for it, tremendous market consolidation in the industry. But it was very, it was on premise, it was clunky. And yeah, so that's pretty much where I was beginning to cut my teeth, and had an opportunity come in via LinkedIn where there was a company that was a startup. They had been around for a few years and were working on a Salesforce-based product that would essentially replace that on-premise ERP. And yeah, took a leap of faith and ended up joining the team because I thought that there was a serious use case for it. Could see the vision and the applications for it. So that's where I got introduced to Salesforce.
Fantastic. So there is a slightly different story how you got your first role in ERP and how that came about. I don't know if you want to share that, your first career go, if you like, and then what happened. And, because we hear a lot about, people accidentally falling into this industry, right? And I mean, you did accidentally fall into this.
Yeah.
So what happened?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, on the clearance side, I thought everything was going to be gravy. Ironically, I'd actually enlisted with my a fellow peer of mine at the time, so we went through it together, and we actually went through the whole selection process and getting cleared and everything else. Pretty much signed our contracts, and we're just waiting to ship out. And that's when that administration at the time kind of updated the state sponsors of terror list and put my parents' country of origin on there. I was native born American citizen, so I didn't think it would affect it, but it did put me kind of in a legal limbo, which was really unexpected. My buddy ended up leaving well before me, so I was completely shocked because we were kind of on the same timeline. But since he was from his family was from a different country, he didn't get caught in that kind of situation. So yeah, it was very unexpected. Never thought I would be working in tech or ERPs or aviation. So that kind of just came out of nowhere. But, once I started working with it, seeing the potential for it and establishing myself in it, I really was grateful that it ended up happening. So sometimes life throws you a curveball, but it works out nicely.
Yeah, it does indeed. Cool, very cool. So inav. What do inav do exactly? We know they're a subsidiary of Mitsubishi in the aviation space, but what exactly do they do? How would you describe it to your niece or nephew? What does Hector do at inav?
Yeah, for sure. So inav, essentially what we do is we provide material to commercial engine users. So essentially anybody that has aircraft and have wide body aircraft, mostly the CFM56 platform engines are what we're supplying. So anything from a fan blade to the stator assembly, things of that nature, that's really our core focus, supplying the material. It's a very kind of supply chain oriented business. I think an interesting part is that you can't really source this material through organic channels. You have to go out there and buy these whole assets yourselves and then turn it into these the sellable inventory. So we essentially seek out assets, piece them out, and then ship those pieces out to our customers. And we use Salesforce to do every aspect of our business, from tracking the asset to managing the inventory that comes out of it, valuing it, sending it to the customer, quoting it. Every single aspect of our business process is on Salesforce. What do I do at inav? I make sure that those processes run smoothly. If there's an opportunity for improvement or there's any change, such as a couple months ago, for example, the regulatory environment changed with the introduction of additional tariffs. Our business had to respond and implement a tariff model that would print, and provide visibility to the customers on those tariffs. So it's a mix of reacting to market conditions and making sure our systems are, set up to that, and then continuously refining, optimizing our internal processes and thinking how the people, processes, and technology can go hand in hand to have a better and more automated business as, the landscape continues to change, especially in 2026.
Amazing. And your role isn't just limited to Salesforce. We know your remit includes ERP and RevOps, but again, from a tech stack perspecve, we're talking Slack, MuleSoft, Azure, Microsoft. Are there any other products we're missing?
A lot of people lump Slack into Salesforce now, but we're like heavy Slack users, big champions of Slack, and we think that there's, it's going to be the system of action, and the lines between the traditional Salesforce CRM is kind of being blurred. Our ERP sits natively on Salesforce, so that's why a lot of the development is focused heavily around there, and then we use Azure to kind of extend that.
Perfect. And then lastly on inav, before we move on to next topic, how long have inav been around in business? How big are they as a business? Obviously, maybe if you're not within aviation, you might not have heard of inav. So what is their presence like?
Yeah, so inav was founded in 2004. It was acquired by our parent organization in Ireland, ELFC, in 2023. And I think the Mitsubishi acquisition of both of us came very shortly after in some period in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. Or they may have, yeah, that was the scenario there. And yeah, it's a very interesting company. It's very forward under adoption of technology. I think, the aviation industry is paper-based, old industry. It's moved slowly because of different governmental hurdles, regulation. People get worried about making change because of those things. So inav has been kind of on the forefront of it. They're one of the first adopters of the Salesforce product that we work a lot with called AvSite. And, they were switching from a legacy on-premise system. They adopted it early. They made additional investments in building out a department and kind of focusing on being forward thinking about it. So I think that differentiates it in a lot of ways from a traditional, maybe mom and pop business that you would find in the aviation industry. So yeah, that's, I think, the big differentiator.
Yeah. So, yeah, tell us a bit about AvSite, because I can guarantee you no one has heard of it, or very few of our listeners have heard of it. I certainly never heard of it. Yeah. So, what exactly does it do?
Yeah, sure thing. And I think a lot of people are used to kind of going the traditional route with Salesforce, which is you reach out to Salesforce, you scope your business out with a solutions engineer. They pitch you some licenses and you purchase it. Maybe an industry cloud if there's something specifically built out, like health cloud, financial services, or things of that nature. Or perhaps you reach out to a consulting group. They suggest Salesforce as a solution to your problems, and they help you with the implementation and kind of the spine, like these bespoke processes for your organization. We've seen a big trend towards industry clouds, and that's great because a lot of the functionality comes prepackaged out of the box. So where does AvSite kind of sit in there? It's a third party, very similar to an industry cloud. They've decided that to address the needs of the aviation market, they've gone ahead and built out a full stack ERP, and it's available on the Salesforce platform. And it's an OEM partner, so you can purchase Salesforce through them and get the full AvSite feature base while being still sitting on the Salesforce platform. So you can get a lot of the kind of existing workflows that would be standardized across the aviation industry without having to go to a consulting partner to build them out for you, or necessarily, there is no existing aviation cloud from Salesforce at the moment. So going through kind of a bespoke build out process or something of that nature.
So, OEM, for people who don't know, stands for, I believe, original equipment manufacturer, and then kind of got reused for software, even though technically it's not with equipment in the software industry. But it's basically what licensed and resold, but not necessarily rebranded. Right. So it'll basically be like a Salesforce managed package installed on Salesforce, but then sold as a unit. So you just get the org pre-installed. That's
correct.
accurate?
Yes, exactly. So the org is spun up with the package pre-installed, and it comes with some special contractual restrictions where you're mostly centered around the package functionality. You still have access to a lot of Salesforce features, obviously all the native things like flows and process builders for automation. Not that process builders are relevant anymore, but back in the day, and some of those standard objects that are kind of cross. So like things like account and contact obviously are gonna be leveraged in both. So it's a really interesting, scenario. And in this particular application, this actually offers the full suite of capabilities. So everything from inventory management to sales, invoicing, managing like the whole kind of life cycle of these transactions, from not necessarily like complex transactions like an opportunity, but a lot of like different order, like small, commodity based orders that aren't necessarily like a complex commercial motion. People are coming in, they're getting priced, they're getting the inventory sold out, moved. Very similar to other applications that have come out in the space, things like Litify, which is essentially the same thing, but for lawyers, and is access a case management system where they can do all aspects of their work, be it triaging the case intake, managing the case, assigning work related to it, etc. So AppSite's just a very large package because the aviation industry is very complex and regulated. So it covers like a very large span. Even our usage of it, really isn't the full usage of the package, because we don't do things like heavy maintenance, or we're not actually maintaining a fleet of aircraft, or we're not doing XYZ. And the package has all those, kind of different capabilities to manage that. So your footprint can be kind of as big or as large as you need it inside of it, but it has all those like pre-built workflows that would take kind of like a long time or a lot of custom work to put together.
So AppSite has the ERP built in to it, as well. So maybe this is a stupid question, probably because I don't know the industry nearly as well as you do. Like, what? Like, you guys are just selling parts. Like, what? Why wouldn't you use like an auto parts type reseller package? Or there's something there very specific to aviation, right? I mean,
yeah, it's the regulatory requirements of the industry, and a lot of like the things that stem from it. So there's like a lot of very specific like certifications that the parts need to have. You basically, like, you can't just take a part off the shelf and sell it. You need to give it its whole history and trace back. There's a lot of like aviation specific marketplaces, like EDI, things that need to get pulled in, and the information needs to get aggregated. Some people are doing like services, and there's a lot of off the shelf like ERPs that have been, built, and like some legacy players, and pretty much kind of take an automotive one and put a skin on it and work a lot on it to perfect it. But you end up, that only gets you probably like 60% of the way. So some of those things are similar from like a process point of view, but like often not the same, regulatory environment. So big distinction there.
real cool. So, how does like the versioning work? Like, is there like an ultimate edition, enterprise edition, and baseline?
Oh, it's actually pretty interesting. No, you just buy it and you get the whole package. So as it stands, it's just like one price for the, it's price per user per month, and you can just, you get access to the managed package, and the managed package has the full capabilities, and you can use it as you see fit.
So tell us about cost, because I've heard a lot of, I guess at least in other industries, I don't know about AppSite, that it's actually cheaper to buy an OEM, often cheaper because I guess the OEM gets a bulk price or a stripped down, very limited to what you need. It's almost like a way to buy specifically what you need as opposed to buy everything. Is that true?
Yeah, for sure. I think in some ways it does reduce our total cost footprint, because replicating the same functionality would cause us to purchase like a lot of licensing that on platform that maybe isn't necessary with the current, configuration that we have with the package. For example, I think like the sales motion, we don't really have a sales motion that maps well to the opportunities. It's not a long commercial process. It's like a lot of short, order-based items, a lot of like pricing. It doesn't play well into the kind of price books, products, opportunity products framework that's there. We would also have to like essentially get everybody, kind of these enhanced Sales Cloud licenses and put them on the enterprise edition. So costs begin to, stack up, I think, for the conventional Salesforce implementation, where you're looking at using one of those clouds and then trying to customize it a bit. Plus, obviously, all the billable time or the internal resources that you'll have to bring in to kind of adjust it and bridge the gap. So I think that's where like the distinction on like the pricing comes out, really, really clear.
So in terms of AppSite, so to go backwards a little bit in terms of your personal journey, there's a reason you know the product very well, right?
Yes.
And that's because you spent over 2.5 years there.
Yeah.
So you know the product inside out, but again, for I don't know the product, and we've never had anyone in the aviation space on our podcast yet before. So in terms of the product itself, so we understand the benefits it would bring and who potentially the customers might be: aviation parts distributors and defense contractors and companies like yourself, who generally have high RFQ volume, complex inventory, things like that, with the compliance requirements. Is there any like competitor on the market to Avsite, or is it kind of like it's such a niche market that you would just go with? They're the dominant player, maybe like a Litify. You would use Litify, or you use Rootstock if you're in that industry. Like it's just a one company only type offering.
You know, not at all. Like there's a lot of active players in this space, but there's nobody else that offers a Salesforce solution, which I think is why it's such a attractive option for a lot of companies, where you get the benefits of being on the Salesforce platform and maybe not having to tool up existing resources, learn new languages, learn kind of like, put on that maintenance burden, etc. So there's like other players like that are providing web-based applications, either on their own platforms, building stuff on things like AWS or other platforms like Azure infrastructure as well, and kind of hosting these applications and providing services. And there's also like the older legacy players that had provided services, such as that original Oracle ERP where I started out, that have kind of adapted into a SaaS model and begin to distribute it via the web as well, and kind of modernize that infrastructure. But there's no direct competitor on the Salesforce platform, and obviously wouldn't make any sense for there to be, because the amount of time in incumbency Avsite has. And I think that's like a real competitive advantage. Like when I'm looking as a director and companies asking me to evaluate software for a fledgling business, or a business looking to do a huge transformation and change really how the way they're working, be it like if they're heavily paper-based, et cetera. And I'm looking at a couple of RFPs, and I have to sit down and purchase Salesforce for CRM functionalities and patch it back into my ERP anyways, versus I can kind of buy the whole stack and add on licenses and capabilities as I needed. Kind of seems like a no-brainer for me, especially when the total cost footprint is significantly lowered, especially versus traditional kind of on-premise solutions or likewise the newer SaaS offerings. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So essentially, you're in a Salesforce-based ERP, right? Specific for the aviation space. So, how difficult is it, Avsite as a product? And in terms of like, when you're hiring, you're bringing on a team of admins or developers, like how much different is it to the Salesforce core platform? I know it's built on Salesforce like every other ISV, but it sounds like it's very complex in comparison. Just a quick research, like, is it really Salesforce? Like how much of the percentage would you liken it to a Salesforce sales or service cloud org?
I'd say it's like 50-50. So like a lot of the same core skills carry over. So people that are great at flows and great at writing Apex are going to be able to write great flows in Apex. And I think that's great. But you really have to retool the way you think about your solutioning and maybe how you approach problems, right? Like it requires a lot of research into the existing capabilities of the platform. You don't want to end up duplicating functionality that's already out there that they're providing and is maybe hooked into additional things that you're not considering, right? So versus when you're working on a evergreen greenfield implementation, or you're working in your own org that's been just proven to you by Salesforce, you have full control over the logic, and you can have full visibility into what's occurring, so you don't have any of those considerations. In theory, you have well documented features and things that you've built out. So it's interesting when you hire. It's a small pool if you're looking for prior experience. And then if you're looking to kind of skill up somebody new, which we've been in the process of doing that for roughly like a year and a half. So someone that's net new, not a ton of Salesforce experience prior, so it's a little bit different. But I think it's a lot of understanding like the data model and like the difference between the data model. People are very used to like working with certain like you work in Sales Cloud, it's the opportunity products. You know that inside out, how it all ties together. You come to an application like this, it's completely not applicable. You kind of have to relearn how the Salesforce is laid out and the different aspects of it. But I think a lot of the core skills carry over, and if people are open to skilling up and doing research and treating it as like no different than any other industry cloud, they can find a lot of success in adopting those tools. I think there's a lot of new emerging ones like Rootstock, who it's a really interesting cloud ERP for manufacturing. It's kind of a similar situation. It's a highly complex piece of software, a lot of objects, that's the full stack. Even if I were to make the switch from AppSite to that, it's going to be a huge learning curve. Basically, start over from zero on the how the objects and everything else flow.
And in terms of, you mentioned hiring. When you are hiring, do you, with AppSite in mind, do you tend to find more success when hiring individuals that have aviation experience first and maybe just broader CRM, ERP experience, not Salesforce, or vice versa? So Salesforce first, industry, they'll pick it up. I know it depends on individuals. It might not be a one size fits all, but what generally do you prefer, or have you found successful in this industry?
I think it's like a mix of both. Like, I think the right technically inclined candidate with a strong Salesforce background, like somebody from a consulting background, a solution architect, just picks it up pretty quickly and is going to get on the ball rolling with it. Versus if I'm picking up a relatively junior role where tech experience isn't a guarantee, and maybe they don't have, you can't look for a consulting background or something like of that nature for them to have those thought patterns and design methodologies. Then industry experience is the way to go, right? So the gap of teaching the industry to somebody, if somebody has the innate skill to pick it up and maybe has worked in consulting, so you've jumped across multiple projects, you have to understand the business quickly, you have to be able to digest what people are saying. Obviously, that's going to be a huge asset. But if you're going with somebody that has no necessary background in either, I think industry experience is going to be the differentiating factor every time, because it is a very unique experience in the industry. It's not something that translates well, I think, from others.
Yeah, so I have a bit of an ERP background. I was actually in ERP systems before I moved to CRM systems. Did a lot of warehousing, inventory type systems. One of the things that always, I would say, bothered me, but made me think that Salesforce wasn't the right tool for inventory, is the need for triggers to keep quantities, or I would think you would need triggers to keep quantities uh, in balance, and that if something fails, your inventory would be wrong. Like if you had a trigger fail because you can't rely on like referential integrity type stuff. Is that something that you run into, that you need to really make sure that if you get like a trigger or flow error, you're worried about losing a part in a warehouse?
Yeah, we haven't had a situation like that come up. Thankfully, I think two things. One is they've done a really good job with the abstraction layer of defining the relationship between the order line item and the inventory. So that kind of like safety guard of having to go through these screens that create these records in sequence before the inventory is even touched and validated prevents kind of those discrepancies. And so if you have like a strong allocation process, I think most of the time that's resolved. And that's one of the benefits of getting the package, because it comes with that allocation process out of the box. Yeah, but that's always like a concern. In maybe other systems, so that I haven't had it occur to me ever. So that's been great, in at least on AppSite, right? And for us, when we're building a flow or automation that is touching anything with inventory, or really actually when we do any type of DMO operation, we've instituted a lot of logging. So we have Nebula Logger handle any type of failure. And we automatically publish a log with where it broke, kind of what happened, everything up in the transaction up to that point. And then we automatically create a case and route it to our technical team to review. So if there were any kind of automations, which would be few and far in between, because we kind of have processes through the ERP for most of the inventory touching, we would be notified immediately with a case and understand exactly what happened, why it errored, all the nature of that. So observability is definitely important because of the ERP nature of the program, and that's why we've kind of brought in Nebula Logger. Obviously, we can't have observability on the managed package because that's their proprietary code, and Salesforce doesn't allow you to view it. But anything we do, we have that.
So, so it's really interesting. It probably sounds like you're relying on logging plus heavy testing of the managed package. So it looks like your code is really solid. What about like inventory movements? So you are it does warehousing, meaning like
Yes.
locations, storage
Yep.
locations?
So, yep, we can do digital and physical locations. We can do warehouse transfers, all that through the existing methods provided by AppSite. So really the only scenarios where we're doing inventory alterations currently is for scrapping. So when we scrap stuff out of our inventory, and that's kind of a very regulated and controlled process anyway. So when we built that out for ourselves, we had
Oh wow! So you do scrapping, which means you do assembly too. You'll take like 3 parts and turn it into one, or package
No, we
them
don't. We won't do assembly of like components into a new component, but we will do like multiple line items into a package and ship it, or multiple orders aggregated into a package and ship it.
Really cool. All done in Salesforce.
Yeah.
So yeah. What about integrations? I know you guys are like using MuleSoft. It sounds like AppSite does almost everything. So what are you integrating with?
So we integrate with Zencraft, so they handle the actual shipping of the carriers, and that's been an ongoing process where we've had to like refine the connections between the orders and like the releases in AppSite versus the shipping firing to the carrier and handling all that automated. So that's a big integration for us. Fantastic package from Zencraft, great team over there, and they've helped us a lot, kind of continue to refine that. So that's a sweet one. And that does a lot of great work for us. Really critical piece of infrastructure there. It's been a long journey trying to kind of get it fully hammered out, but it's been great. We use SharingPix, which has been a great partner for us as well, to provide the ability to take online and offline pictures in the warehouse and have all that storage off platform, because that's one of the biggest considerations of ERP. You're ingesting huge amounts of files, but Salesforce storage is expensive. A lot of those pictures aren't really relevant to core processes because it's like shipping intake and shipping outbound. So, bringing that package in was a great way to offload those and provide us with advanced photo editing capabilities and photo capture. See that package a lot in field service. So that was a natural, fit. Slack, we're full in on the Slack CRM side. So using Salesforce records, those AppSite records as channels and driving things in that nature.
All of that for Mule? You're using MuleSoft for all of this stuff?
Yeah, most of the stuff is like just wired straight onto Salesforce. We use MuleSoft specifically for our Slack integration because we found that like the out of the box experience from the Salesforce to Slack wasn't what we wanted, because there were certain things we wanted to enforce with like Slack referrals and things of that nature. So we went ahead and built out kind of that MuleSoft infrastructure that listens for events and then goes ahead and picks those up and shoots over the relevant Slack messages to Slack. One of the biggest things for us, for example, is as soon as an order is released, we have a channel. They get a cute notification with all the information about it, priority, and a button that they can click, and it'll launch them into the picking screen in Salesforce where they can start their picking process in the warehouse, go ahead, grab whatever they need. So having that tight coupling with all the systems, MuleSoft lets us do it through the listeners and the event firing. But oftentimes a lot of stuff we can just do it straight off on Salesforce because everything's on Salesforce. So like SharingPix and the other one were just packages that we hooked in.
So I'm sorry. So for all of the third-party tools, you're just using like a package that the vendor provided, except for the product owned by Salesforce. That one you had to buy MuleSoft to integrate with.
Yeah, the way we wanted, pretty much. Yeah, the way that we wanted. Yeah. The other thing that we're using MuleSoft for heavily is we've been building out these IDP flows, so classification of like inbound documents, because aviation's like document heavy. So we got that, and we're doing things like looking at doing payables automatically, taking invoices and paying them, and things of like classifying certificates of that nature. But yeah, pretty ironic that we did all this stuff by just downloading things from App Exchange, and then we had to had to get MuleSoft for that part. Yeah.
Yeah, MuleSoft. They came out with a product. I forgot what it was called. Where it can like parse PDFs and get the text out of it.
Yeah, that's exactly
Uh,
what we use. The intelligent
IDP.
document
IDP is
process.
called.
Yes, intelligent document processing, and it's a really cool feature. And we've been toying around with it for a couple months, and with a couple different workflows. It's really cool. It's actually like super cool. Like I think the curve for like using it is not that bad actually from like an extraction point of view. It's really wiring it into the whole workflow that's proven to be kind of like difficult. Like going the full yard of like, hey, who's going to send the email to this, and where is the listener going to go and stuff. But from the point of view of like, hey, I'm a Salesforce admin, not an architect, just Salesforce admin. Maybe no Apex experience, nothing like that, just purely declarative. And I go into MuleSoft and I look at the IDP solution. I could actually extract meaningful insights from a document through natural language prompting, adjusting the different things that it's querying for. So I think that's actually like really cool. Like that's something that before maybe specialized tools you need to bring in. Or even if you're using things like the Azure AI tooling, it's a lot more user involvement versus this is like literally geared towards like, hey, let me just describe the different things that I'm looking for, these kind of variables you create, and it goes out and fetches it dynamically.
So the flow that I've always imagined IDP for is get an email, PO. MuleSoft picks up the email, says, this is a purchase order, takes a purchase order, does some kind of image recognition on it, strips out the order, enters it into whatever ERP system, in your case, Salesforce. That's what you guys are doing?
Well, thankfully, actually, our vendor AppSite's well ahead of the curve on that. So they've deployed LLM capabilities, and we were one of the first adopters of their email to quote feature, and we've been working with that heavily. And basically, any document that's sent in kind of goes into that LLM framework. It handles the creation of the record automatically in the system, and it links it back to the originating document or email, so that you kind of have that human in the loop of like, here's the original request, and then here's the item inside of it. So we've gone with vendor capabilities for like those options because the existing vendor has chosen to pursue them, and I think we'll see a lot of that with these third-party vendors that need to make a differentiating factor for themselves. Is like they will bring the AI into the ERP where all the information is contextual and they already know where it is and they can make the most effective use of it, versus if you were to take a tool like MuleSoft, you still have to kind of put the semantic layer of saying, here's the information, now where is it going into the system, and having to own the logic of the mapping and how, when, and how to create those records, etc.
With regards to AvSite and how you're using AvSite currently and intention to use it in the future, you mentioned some of the things that you're doing right now in terms of automation and leveraging other platforms like MuleSoft with IDP for productivity enhancement and things like that. Where in general do you feel like the best use cases in your world for AI and automation, whether you've done them currently or not, but like what are you thinking about moving forwards?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I found the largest gains in AI productivity to be like in the actual revenue operations process. So everything from solutioning to actual build outs. I think we're really in an interesting time where people were solo operators. They could essentially replace their entire delivery arms with well-trained agents in a strong framework, which is really cool. So we've gone full AI first on our development processes, and we're using it heavily from the initial user drafting of the story to working through the solution design to then the actual kind of build out. I think one of the biggest things is people kind of think AI is like, hey, you just turn it on and it's going to work. But, one of the most important things for it is context and being proactive and intentional with how you're structuring the context for the AI. So building out the blueprints and tools, the expectations, for example, for us, we implemented a great workflow with Claude and the Claude MCP with Slack, where we can kind of take an issue in Slack, give our thoughts on how we want to resolve this, and ping this, Claude, who will come into the channel, read the message that or maybe originally sparked it if it's a thread or conversation, take the context plus all the guidance that we've given it about, hey, how we want the solution to work, because maybe we've been having an engineering discussion going back and forth. Is this going to be a flow? Is this going to be an LWC? Whatever, we hash it out. We make our choices, then we're pinging Claude and bringing it in there. And we can make sure that it creates a very well-detailed JIRA story, automatically assigned to the resource, has all the information needed about the issue, can infer based off all the expected standards and the context that we fed it, because it has access to our GitHub and it has access to the rules that we've set up, understand like exactly what needs to happen, chunk it out into actionable tasks, and basically save that whole time where we would have had to have a meeting, or we would have maybe had to bring in somebody to spend some time typing up these JIRA stories to make sure that the work is going to occur. So that's step one, is getting solutions kind of well fleshed out, well laid out, well documented, have it all there. Step two is, bringing in AI assistance in the actual build out. So using tooling like Cursor or Claude Code that we've been using heavily. And since we have these well formatted design documents and it's plugged into our repos and we have the rules, it can produce pretty high quality code versus kind of just saying, hey, I have this feature, I need you to build it. You don't have this ontology of the company. You have no context of who the end user is. You have no context about the internal technical standards. You're just writing code based off very generic best practices, right? So I think kind of creating that ecosystem has really changed how we look at delivery for our end users. Things that would have taken a long time before can be significantly faster. Maybe some apprehension about building out a solution for the user to have a tactile kind of experience versus, be like, oh, are you sure this is really what you want? A lot of things that might sit in discovery longer because we're delaying a build because we want to have all the requirements fleshed out. That kind of shifts. You can prototype quicker. You can spin up, changes faster. You can have people click through things and understand this is what it would look like versus maybe just having to wireframe everything. And I think it reduces a lot of the need for the end user's imagination.
So Salesforce doesn't have Aviation Cloud, not yet, at least. So we know a little bit, we talked a bit about AvSite and the importance there. Where does Salesforce stop and AvSite start for you guys? How, what would you say, like, is there a clear black and white? I know they're all integrated, it's one system, but like, where do you think it starts and stops?
So I think it was interesting because I think when I started in my role here, I talk a lot about Salesforce and people were like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, we don't use Salesforce. And I'm like, well, we actually do. We use it every day, right? And that's why the login screen is on Salesforce. So, if that doesn't tell you like how not clued in sometimes the people that are actually using the applications are going on to the background of everything. I don't know what else to say, but I would say there is no clear line or distinction, right? Like, the platform basically holistically does everything we need. And it's been a bit of a mindset shift for people to begin talking about it as Salesforce as we've expanded our footprint. So we brought in cases for customer support, and we bought Service Cloud licenses and things of those nature, and they're seeing other parts of the platform. So I think, over time, they've wrapped their head around the larger concept. But if you were looking at it purely from, hey, we got a new system, and you were the end user, I think a lot of times it doesn't click for them that they're part of this larger ecosystem. And a lot of the materials and resources that you see from people or consulting partners or things of that nature that work in the Salesforce ecosystem can apply to you. Like, those certifications are valuable to you. Your knowledge of the platform carries over versus like, you're just thinking about it from a, hey, this is site.
I like it. So maybe unknowingly to customers of Avsite, perhaps this observation you made is maybe not unique to yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the kind of the community aspect. Like we have found like the Salesforce or HANA, it is very community driven, but especially in aviation, it's a very, very small world. And you talked about kind of some of the user groups that exist in this space. What I guess what is your favorite one, and is that a good spot for like comparing with other leaders in positions to yourself, or is it more, are they more like technical, like the TDX type equivalents that we have in the Salesforce space?
Yeah, so it's actually a great mix. So the company Appset actually sponsors an annual user group, and their employees go and they provide a lot of training and different like showcasing of features and talk about the roadmap. And it's always great to connect with all the other users. It's always a great event, and it's held out, so you get to see other people, chat shop, talk with people that are doing these same things that you're doing. Because when you talk to other Salesforce professionals, some of the issues you face can be like really unique, and it's like, I sometimes find myself able to chat more with people about what they're doing on Salesforce than they can chat about with what I'm doing. So it's always great to have some common ground. I think it's wide mix. Like there's a lot of technical people, a lot of people that I've worked with that are super sharp and are also like working through some of those changes, kind of being on the forefront of these agentic and AI wave and trying to bring it all in. Other people are kind of more business leaders that have, because of these transformations, taken on more of the technical role. So their background comes from the business, but a lot of their value comes from being able to galvanize their teams into understanding the technology, getting them to shift from their legacy mindsets because they have a lot of that credibility from having been in the business. So I think it's a wide bag. I think the favorite group for me definitely is the Discord user group. So after the first AppSite summit, a couple of the prominent community members, I think it was Nicole and Chris Stotts, set up the Discord community. Joined it, and it's been really great because people will just kind of join and pop in, and sometimes it's just, hey, I have a question, or what's in your tech stack, and hey, does anybody have any insights on this, or maybe something, some very specific problem goes down, you at least have other people using the service where you can chat and talk about it. And obviously AppSite support, they have it. That's a great tool. They actually provide support because in ERP, right? Like you need some level of support. This is business critical infrastructure, right? So it's not like it's not a replacement for support, but it is definitely a great supplement when you have an idea or to get an grasp of what other people are doing.
In your opinion, of course, what does Salesforce do well in the aviation space, and where is there maybe room for improvement?
I think it's great that they offer GovCloud. So like a lot of AppSite users are also GovCloud users. So they get a GovCloud instance from Salesforce and then implement AppSite on it. And I think it's great what they've done in the federal space and, being able to provide these capabilities to the aerospace and defense base as those needs are pressing in today's times is always fantastic. I think they're doing a lot of like interesting work with some of the larger airlines and aviation players, more centered around kind of that B2C experience, things like implementing agents for casework, like customer resolution. I personally definitely have called into an airliner recently and spoken to an AI voice. So I'm sure Salesforce is definitely, I'm sure Agentforce is involved to some extent there. So I don't think their focus really has been on the aftermarket so much. There's a lot of diverse business models in it. There's everything from like lessors to the mechanics to the teardowns, the shops, things of that nature. So it's kind of hard to address their customer base. I think, long term, they should continue doing what they're doing, and they've obviously partnered with AppSite and they're doing a great job. So it doesn't seem like they necessarily need to replicate any of the product capabilities. It seems to be like a fairly bespoke and kind of a different focus from the CRM side of Salesforce, where it's very heavy on the customer relationship management.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually did work on a project for a very large airline. I'm not going to mention a name. But I never thought of it as an aviation project because there's so much customer service, lost luggage type.
Exactly.
Yeah, straight ticketing type stuff, right? I did have a question about I find it interesting that you go to the app site Discord for support. It's like, has Salesforce gotten so big that the community support isn't the same, and that a smaller community is more helpful,
Well, a lot
or
of
is
it,
it
I
just
think,
app site specific? Sorry.
I think a lot of it is that it's like app site specific. Like, I think the last time I went to Salesforce for an issue was like, sometime like halfway through last year, where we were working with a very specific Aura. It was like a LWC with an LWC like embedded in an Aura wrapper. It was something like that, and we were getting this crazy error, and we couldn't pull debug logs, and we had to actually sit with Salesforce support and pull it from their server side logs to give us guidance. But we haven't really had many problems with like the Salesforce support. I know it's been a hot topic, like trying to navigate the new Agentforce site, and honestly, it's been pretty atrocious for me. Like when I go to look for something, so hopefully, that improves. I had no problem with the old site, so I think that's to each their own. I think there's great uses of AI. Maybe navigating the knowledge base was a big jump there for Salesforce. Um, AppSite offers like premier support, so when we do have an issue and it's an AppSite feature, we reach out to them. They always get back to us with SLA, and we kind of work through those problems. So it's kind of like a moot point for us. And also as a partner, they could escalate to Salesforce support through their unique channels through the partner community. So like worst case, that would also be like an avenue for us to kind of pursue if Salesforce wasn't really being helpful. I think for us, it's mostly like, hey, we use this product and not a lot of actually, a lot of people use this product, but not a lot of people are Salesforce admins that can provide some level of insight on what's going on with the product, etc.
Oh, real cool. So, I mean, that is interesting though, that you don't like this. Like, it used to be the Salesforce community was like really, really the
Yeah.
best place to get any kind of help. It definitely things are definitely changing from there. I'm not exactly sure why. I do know some of the more senior people have, let's say, had their fill of Salesforce and are looking to move out of the ecosystem, particularly with the last round of layoffs. But that's a whole other topic. Yeah, let's pivot back to some of the AI stuff that you were doing. That seemed very interesting.
Sure.
Um, I know you're integrating with Slack. From the development side, are you using like AI like connected to like Jira or
Yeah.
to communicate with? Yeah, so tell us about that. How are you using?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the Jira like solution use case earlier. So we used like Jira MCP with Claude, and we have those two tied together with GitHub, and that allows it to, through the Slack context of whatever the solution thread is, really put together a comprehensive user story. When we're actually like programming our solutions, like our primary ID of choice is cursor, but sometimes we may run things in parallel, have a cursor running in one window and be also working on like the same branch with Cloud Code. Um, the new cursor feature with like the cloud agents has been really cool, where we're able to kind of feed it these larger design documents, and it automatically breaks out the work into smaller, agent frameworks. Yeah, I mean, I think AI is like fantastic. I think it has a huge place in the current development processes, as people are like designing, how they're going to structure their development teams. I think that's a big consideration, is augmenting current capabilities by bringing in these, AI assisted coding and things of that nature.
So any issues with there? Any funny stories? Let's say even better.
When we were working to gear up like the actual like Jira creation of the story, there was a lot of like fine tuning the prompts and like getting the tools to get it to, sometimes it was just like way too much. Like it'd be giving you like 50 acceptance criterias for like a pretty straightforward like testing scenario. I think the funniest thing is we've given it a, kind of a name, and we call it internally Claudio. So instead of Claude, it's Claudio, and we got, it's like we kind of treat it like our buddy. It's like, hey, what does Claudio think about this? Or, maybe we hand this one off to Claudio and he can one shot it, right? So it almost feels like it's, sitting as a fourth member of the team, which is, I think, a little scary, but also really great from my point of view, because it's increased velocity without necessarily sacrificing, quality of life for the resources.
Yeah, it's funny when talking with sorry, real quick. It's funny talking to junior developers. Sometimes they'll use the we pronoun, and you're like, who we? Like, who are you working with? And they'll be talking about the agent,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh my god.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's like, like, oh, we were working on it yesterday. Like, who are you working on it with? Claudio.
I was gonna ask, does Claudio go through the performance reviews, the year ends? Did Claudio meet his expectations this year and get his bonus? And
Yeah. No, he's doing great. He never gets tired. He always puts his best effort in, and no, I think it's really interesting. I think one of the biggest things is as you tie these things tighter into your processes, the reliance on them is outstanding. Oftentimes you think about things like an ontology, right? Like, what is inav, and what does that mean for an AI agent, and like, how does it interact with it? Because for us, inav is a corporate and business entity, but for these agents, it's a collection of data sets. It's different sources, it's context that's being ingested into it, right? So the more you use these and develop that ontology layer, the harder it is to move away from these platforms or switch vendors. So kind of this innate lock-in as you continue to accelerate your own delivery. Conversely, if we were today to move to a different model provider and have to like move a lot of our work, it's difficult. Like, we would definitely sacrifice some of the stability and things that we've built out today and have to re-architect that. And it only gets worse the longer you spend on it, right? The more time that you spend on it. And this is such an emerging field that I think a lot of people aren't necessarily, bearing that in mind, which is like vendor lock-in is happening innately through the building of these workflows. So yeah, just, food for thought as you're working through some of these things.
Any concerns about AI in aviation? Just it doesn't have to be centered to inav, just in general. Like, obviously you've been in this space pretty much all your career at this point. So and there's so many different components to aviation, right? You've mentioned the P2C, obviously the airlines, that's the most obvious, but you got everything, right? You got defense, you've got cargo, you've got supply chain. Any concerns?
I think that we're seeing applications of AI in really interesting and novel ways that aren't necessarily, territory that's ever been explored before. Like, I think a lot of the systems that are being deployed in the federal government today, such as the systems by Palantir, represent like, cutting edge technological nation state advantages that other state actors don't have, or, those things are very interesting, like philosophical shifts about how we think about, our nation's defense and also like our global posture. I also think as, in this pursuit of efficiency, we see things like, air traffic control the other day, resources are strained. Are we going to begin to bring in AI into that side of the industry of like, air traffic control / pilots? And you've seen kind of the regression of the years from having a 3-man air crew with a first officer and navigator. And as technology has advanced, you've seen the removal of the navigator to now a 2-person crew. Some people are saying even we're going to go down to 1-person crews. So what does that mean with the rise of AI long term? And I think there's a lot of things where you can bring in AI and there's a lot of credible value. And, I think there's like a lot of different applications that they're fantastic, but I don't think we're at the point where like, some of those applications should be front and center of policy discussions. Like, I hope we're not bringing AI into air traffic control or flying planes, anytime, in the civilian world, because that would have like, sometimes it gets my coffee order wrong. Like, it'd be real bad if it, mixed up something with one of those kind of sensitive industries. So I think it's really important that as things change every day and progress is being made, that people are constantly thinking about, should we even apply AI here, right? Like, can we apply AI to make certain processes more efficient, but maybe not fully, autonomize it? I think human in the loop is really critical at this stage where trust but verify, is I think the core tenement of AI right now. So yeah, I think that's good for thought.
Autopilot has existed since like the 70s, I think. for the airplane.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And autocast and like the automatic like stabilization, like for example, like if you see the latest fighter aircraft, if the pilot goes unconscious, you're hitting 2,000 feet, bam, you're just aircraft levels out, flies, and definitely some interesting and novel use cases there. But I think just kind of doing away with the human in the loop completely, like at any point autopilot's going on, guy can take it on, can take over. I wouldn't feel great if the autopilot resolution loop is an agent is going to review what the autopilot's saying. That would not be great.
Think of it like the Waymo type stuff, right? It's the same concept. It's testing people's comfortability with AI in what could be life and death scenarios, right? To be honest, as a traveler, all I want is my flight to arrive on time and take off on time. That's all I want. I don't care about anything else. So baby steps. Let's get that right first, and we'll go from there. Is my opinion. But last question for you, Hector. Your advice and thoughts on individuals that might be interested in getting into the aviation space, particularly from a Salesforce outside, ERP, CRM perspective. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is shifting your thinking about how to break into the ecosystem. So a lot of the previous advice has been like, get skilled up in Salesforce, get your certifications, get a solid technical understanding of flow and the different aspects of the program. I think like a lot, if you're trying to break in, industry experience is going to be a lot more relevant because the technical layer has been pretty much commoditized. We've seen a lot of that over the years with the shift to offshore models and things of that nature, and then the kind of shift to nearshore delivery. But I think we've kind of pretty much run the full gamut where now it's like AI assisted delivery and the combination of those three things. So, it's very tough to compete with resources in that space. So your best bet is, trying to get real relevant process experience. So when your company's doing any type of digital transformation, get involved, right? Like a lot of people don't like change. And if you can be a change engine and somebody that is involved in these processes, maybe their role can grow and expand from there as you get, additional exposure to it. But I think it's a lot more easy for somebody now to have, established career and make the transition into revenue operations or ERP tech versus like, hey, I'm just going to go out there and become an ERP developer because I learned how to code from a coding boot camp, right? Like that's not really, I think, in today's market, going to get you where you need to be.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, Hector, thank you. Absolute pleasure. And, it was really good to get a whistle-stop tour into Salesforce and Aviation, and AvSite, and kind of what IAV do, and and it's a starting point for individuals that I think it's such a fascinating industry, and unless you work for an airline, you might not get that exposure, but there is more opportunity than just working for an airline. I think that's the point. And you gave 2 examples.
Yeah, and I think to Maz's point, even if you worked at the airline and you worked on their Salesforce side, it would pretty much not even be an aviation thing. It would be like customer loyalty, and it'd be a lot of customer support and call center style, because it's kind of a B2C business. So it's interesting, depending on what side of the aviation industry you are, your exposure to Salesforce will be radically, different.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, thanks again, Hector. Appreciate it.